Let's get started. Hello from Kansas. Oh, hi. Who else is here? Judy and Kay, who have Kansas connections. All right. You probably couldn't get farther from Alaska from Kansas unless you're in Florida, but there's no ocean there. So let's get this started. Hello again. I'm Kat from the Wild Alaskan Company recipe team, coming in live from Brooklyn, New York. It's officially summer, and that means the Alaskan salmon are running. That means they're running from the ocean back to their natal streams. And over the next coming months or next even weeks, commercial and subsistence fishers are going to be harvesting the foods that will sustain them and us through the next year. So this is high salmon season, especially for a species like sockeye. So like I said, all species of salmon are running, but this summer we really wanted to celebrate what I think is one of Alaska's most iconic fish, sockeye salmon. We have a whole series of events and specials and recipes coming your way over the next few weeks to celebrate this incredible species. And this is day number one. So today's event has three different parts. Part one, I'm just going to share a little bit of background on sockeye with you. I'm not a marine biologist, but I do know a little bit about sockeye, having worked for the company now for a few years. Part two, I'll be joined by a special guest, actually one of my colleagues at Wild Alaskan Company, for a little more personal dive into sockeye. And then part three, I'm going to show you how to, I'm going to teach you how to sear any fillet cut of sockeye, any shape, any size, so that you get nice crispy skin every time. It's super easy. It's not intuitive if you've never done it before, but after you watch today's event, you will be like a salmon searing master. So I'm also joined today virtually by a few of my colleagues from the Wild Alaskan Company team. If they want to come on camera for a moment to just wave hi, they'll be in the rafters helping answer any questions or field any questions that you have along the way through the event. Or afterward as you're trying out new skills. Oh, hey, Ben. So there's Ben. And my screen is blocking who else is on here. But yeah, these are all of my friends that I work with from all around the country. So yeah, they're here to help answer any questions that you have along the way. If you do have any questions, you can ask it there's a Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. That's the best place to put your question. It'll just help us field them to me better, since the chat is pretty crowded with enthusiasm. If you do ask it in the chat, we'll try to find it. But best thing to do, ask it in the Q&A. And also, if you prefer to have captioning on, just know that you always have the option. There's a little button at the bottom of your screen that says more. It's 3 dots, and you can put on captions there. So if that helps you follow along, I do talk fast sometimes. I think it's usually pretty accurate what the captioning says for the words coming out of my mouth. But yeah, so that's sort of just the housekeeping basics. And yeah, let's go to part one. So you might know sockeye as the red one because of this species' very distinctive color. I don't have a sockeye red shirt. This is bright pink, but sockeye is bright red. And that, to me, as someone who didn't grow up around Alaskan fish or sockeye, or really knowing the difference between one species or the other, that's the first thing that I personally noticed about sockeye and became familiar with it through that color. So the red one, sockeye are actually commonly referred to as reds. In comparison, a lot of people refer to coho as silvers because they have a really distinctively flashy silver skin. So sockeye is red, coho silver. Those are things that maybe I think you also may have noticed about sockeye versus coho, or even just thinking about Alaskan salmon in general, you think sockeye. But there's so much more to know about sockeye than just what meets the eye. One thing that is super cool is most sockeye in the world are harvested from Alaska, harvested in Alaska. And actually, most of the sockeye in Alaska are harvested from Bristol Bay, where Aaron Kallenberg, who is the founder of Wild Alaskan Company, this is where he grew up fishing with his father. And it's a multi-generational thing, a connection with Bristol Bay. the latest statistic that I remember just seeing online is like 46% of the world's sockeye population originates in Bristol Bay. So that's a huge deal. If you don't know where Bristol Bay is, I think this is the correct hand. If you think of Alaska like this, and it's got like these little islands coming off of it, Bristol Bay is right here, like right in that little nook. So that's like the cradle of sockeye for the world. Biggest spawning ground on the planet, and it's one of the most precious habitats in Alaska and perhaps the world for sockeye. I would say that sockeye is often described as a keystone species for the region. And keystone species, it's basically just a concept that helps us understand when an entire ecosystem heavily relies on a particular species existence. You know, all of the species in the world, flora, fauna, are interconnected in some ways, and every action has a reaction. But when we're talking about keystone species, they have an especially big reaction attached to them because they're maybe an apex predator or they're top of the food web. But you know, it's not to say that other species aren't important. This is just describing a species that has a really, really special importance. So that is sockeye for Bristol Bay, and even probably you know, in greater Alaska as well. So sockeye holds everything together. If sockeye are harvested unsustainably, or if their ecosystems are put at risk by something destructive like the proposed pebble mine, then as a keystone species, the effects of that reverberate really loudly through the entire food web. And we're talking about animals and plants. I feel like I might have talked about this before, but even the carcasses of salmon, when their bodies go back to the streams and rest on the like stream floor, river floors, all of the nutrients from their bodies get absorbed back into the water, and that actually feeds the trees on the sides of these rivers and streams. So they're connected to everything. And that's just like super, super cool to understand. So from a human perspective, sockeye has been an integral source of food and reverence for millennia, like further back than you can even imagine. Whether you're the person catching it or the person preparing it, it's just really incredible to be able to share this harvest from wherever you are in the country through like a Wild Alaskan Company box that you get on your doorstep. You know, I mentioned earlier, I grew up in Kansas. I didn't have access to this when I was growing up, but now it's incredible that I can be anywhere in the country and tap into this bounty from Alaska. So you might notice in the chat, one of my moderators is dropping in some links. So feel free to click through some of those where we have like some blog posts about the difference between sockeye and coho, different types of salmon in Alaska, other just like sockeye 101 facts, if you feel like taking a deeper dive. Some of those links will actually be in an email that we send out afterwards. So, you know, you don't have to do this right now. A lot of times when we're buying a product, we're buying it in a package, it's not easy to fully wrap your head around where something is from or why it is the way it is. I was telling one of my colleagues the other day, the first time I saw an artichoke in the ground, I didn't know that it was going to look like this beautiful flower. And you know, we get so disconnected from the things that feed us and the things that take care of us that I think it's just important to take a little bit of a deep dive into what we're, you know, what's sustaining us every day of the week or every month of the year. So if you're not seeing any links in the chat, I see a couple of people are having some troubleshooting issues. Don't worry, we'll send links out afterwards. So, and if you don't see a chat bubble up, just click on the little chat thing at the bottom and it should pull up a sidebar for you. So any major questions so far before I move on to the second part of this event? I'll get to the cooking stuff later, so you don't have to ask me about that yet. Oh, hi, another person from Kansas. Kelsey Rose, anything that we want to talk about now, or shall I move on?
I think you are good to jump into cooking.
Perfect. Well, I'm not jumping into cooking yet because part two. I'm joined by my colleague, Melissa, who grew up in Alaska and who actually is my neighbor in Brooklyn. Melissa, if you don't mind joining me. So we actually are a remote company, but Melissa happens to be one of my neighbors, which I think is really fun because we get to trade fish, we get to like actually eat fish together. And, you know, today we're doing an event together. So who would have thought? Melissa grew up in Alaska, but I'll just go ahead and ask her some questions so you can get to know her. First, tell me what you do for Wild Alaskan Company.
Sure. So I am on the member experience team. So if you've ever reached out to us before, if you had a problem with anything or had questions, needed any assistance with your membership account, you may have talked to me or one of my many coworkers. But that's what I do for the company. I've been with them for almost 3 years now.
Yeah, so if you ever see her little avatar or name, I forget how it pops up, you can say, hey, I watched you on that one live event you did in July. So do you have any favorite parts? Like, what's your favorite part of the work that you do for Wild Alaskan Company?
I have a lot of really great conversations with people all the time, from chatting with them about their visit to Alaska or giving some suggestions, talking about salmon. I love sockeye, and I have a lot of great suggestions to give. So if you're ever curious, just reach out to us. We have all the answers.
Yeah, it's really nice to be able to talk to people about food, which is why I love doing these events. I get to talk to the members, you get to do that all the time with your job. So where in Alaska did you grow up?
I grew up in Anchorage and Anchor Point. I grew up mainly between the two. I was born and raised primarily in Anchorage. Anchor Point's about 4 hours away. My grandparents lived there, so I spent a lot of time between the two places.
I drove through Anchor Point, I think, on the way to Homer last year with the company. So I actually kind of know where you're talking about now.
Very small.
Yeah. And just a fun fact, Monica's weekly newsletter is called Anchor Points. So I don't know the exact origins from that, but it is a place and it's a newsletter. So just something to think about next time you open your emails. So is that where your family is originally from? Like from Alaska? How did they get to where they were?
Yeah, so my mom was born and raised in Anchor Point. She went to school a little bit further north in Ninilchik. My dad is actually from Florida, so pretty polar opposite, but they've been in Alaska for quite a while now.
Tell me about what a typical sockeye fishing day is for your family in the summer.
Yeah, it's really just a beach day. You can have one in Alaska. It's bonfires, it's lots of food, lots of board games, with a little bit of fishing on the side. It takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of people. And it takes a lot of time. So in between those waiting periods for fishing and waiting for the net and pulling it in and pulling it out, we spend a lot of time just catching up and hanging out and cooking fish when we can.
So this is subsistence fishing, not commercial fishing.
Correct. Yeah, no, this is subsistence fishing. So it's the fish that we catch during the summertime, and it lasts us well into the next year, sometimes into the following year, if we freeze it correctly.
And I'm sure you do because you've had tons of practice. How many days out of like the average year do you go fishing if you're doing subsistence fishing?
I would say between 2 to 3. We wouldn't go too often. We don't need that much fish, and we also couldn't eat that much fish. So 2 to 3 is a good amount of time. And
2 to 3 days of fishing gives you enough fish for the entire year, basically, for a family?
Generally, there are some years where the fish aren't running as often, or it's just few and far between. So sometimes, you don't get as much as you want, but generally it gives you enough well into the next year. That's amazing.
And I've never been in Alaska while the sockeye are running, but apparently it's crazy. It's just this incredible convergence of all these fish. So I guess it's not that big of a surprise to think that 2 or 3 days of fishing can sustain you for the whole year. But so you usually preserve the bounty by freezing the fish?
Yeah, we freeze them whole. Depends on, how many people are in your family, how you're eating it, how you would like to prepare it throughout the rest of the year. Generally, we like to keep everything whole. And then when we go to use the fish throughout the year, we'll thaw it. Partway through, we'll cut it open and remove everything. It's nice and frozen and solid that way, but it helps protect against freezer burn the best way. Yeah.
And then you smoke and can some of the rest of the fish.
Yeah, we generally keep most of it frozen, but if we want a little bit of smoked treats throughout the rest of the year. We'll smoke some, and then we might can that too. So.
You were telling me that one of your favorite gifts to give to people is smoked salmon.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, that's how much fish we can get sometimes, is we can get so many that we give it away as gifts, and it's nice. It's a nice treat for some people.
I would love to be your neighbor and get smoked fish as a gift, but I'm also very biased working for a salmon company. So what's your personal favorite way to prepare sockeye?
I'm really boring. I love just cooking it in the oven. If I have access to a grill, I'll do it that way, and like some lemon slices and some onion slices. It's the way that I was raised eating salmon, and it's just nice salt, pepper, maybe a couple of spices, sometimes teriyaki on top, but salmon and rice is my go-to. It's the easiest, and I think it's just tastes the best when you have really nice salmon.
Yes, I love teriyaki and salmon. I think that's a great combo. Do we have any questions right now? I just am like scanning the chat a little bit. Sorry, my hand movements are crazy. I'm suddenly turning into like a very expressive person on camera. But any questions for Melissa or about subsistence fishing, like in her experience, anything like that right now, Kelsey Rose?
Could you guys talk about, you're talking about all these amazing things to do with salmon. A couple people are asking what types of salmon we have available at the Wild Alaskan Company.
So today we're talking about sockeye, but we also have coho salmon is the other species that we offer. It's a little bit different than sockeye, or maybe a lot of bit different than sockeye. It's got a different flavor profile, slightly different texture. You can use both sockeye and coho interchangeably. I don't know if that's your experience, like when you're cooking, but sockeye is a little bit better for some things, I think personally, than coho, and vice versa. Because sockeye has a slightly stronger flavor than coho. It's a little firmer, so it's like one that I love grilling. I don't love grilling coho, but I will because it's a little more delicate. So those are the two that that we do offer, and we have many different types of sockeye that we offer in terms of like the cuts. But I'll cover that here in a minute because that's on my list of things to talk about.
Awesome. And then someone's got a question for you, Melissa. Do you really freeze the salmon whole with everything inside?
We do. It depends on your preference and what how fast you go through the salmon. We just keep salmon around for a very long time in our freezer, and we find that that's the best way to protect it from freezer burn or anything like that. So our goal is to keep it around for a long time, and that's how we do it.
Yeah, I did not grow up fishing, so this is all news to me too. So that's a great question. I was very curious about that. Anything else before we want to move on to part 3 here?
I think you're good to move on to part 3.
All righty. Well, I guess before we get into a cooking demonstration, do you mind grabbing some of the stuff out of the fridge and freezer? I mentioned that we have several different iterations of sockeye. So I just want to showcase those to you here right now. The ones that you're probably most familiar with are, let's see, here we go. We've got all this stuff, good stuff in the freezer. We have these 6-ounce portions of sockeye. It's a single fillet. It can be all shapes and sizes. Well, not sizes, but all different sort of shapes. It could be like a trapezoid or a triangle or something that's a little more like a rectangle. But these are what you like the signature product that I say that we offer and have offered since the beginning. So that's what you're probably most familiar with. And we're going to be searing this later today. We also have a slightly different version of that, something called Captain Cuts. This is actually coho. Just pretend that's sockeye. I ate all of my sockeye Captain Cuts this week. But Captain Cuts are pieces that don't conform to the 6-ounce size of our regular portions of fish. So it can, again, be different shapes and sizes. Sometimes a fish will have like a slightly bigger nape that doesn't fit into a rectangle. So you'll get these little like pieces like this. Sometimes it's just like an odd shaped piece, but it's the same fish, just a slightly different size. And I know you really like Captain Cuts.
I do. Yeah, as someone, I just feed myself with the box. So I find that Captain cuts take me pretty far in my week in terms of cooking. And they're the easiest to thaw. I think they're really nice cuts.
Yeah, I would say usually, not always, they tend to be thinner pieces of fish. So if you're ever quick thawing salmon, meaning like you're thawing it on the counter in a bowl of cold water, they will thaw super quickly, maybe 30-40 minutes, I'd say. And then they're ready to cook from there. Oftentimes you'll get a little bit more than 6 ounces in these packs. So it's, I found that it's a really good way to have like to stretch out a meal. If 6 ounces is a lot for you, maybe you make a Captain cut package and then you have 2 meals. One of my colleagues has a two-year-old daughter, and he says that anytime the pack comes with a little piece like this, it's not always the case. Anytime it comes with a little piece like that, that goes to his kid, and it's the perfect size for her, which I just think is adorable. So if I had a dog, that would be for like my little fur baby. But the other products that we have are a little bit newer to our lineup of offerings. I did talk about ground sockeye salmon at the beginning of today's event, but it's literally just ground meat, but it's sockeye. This is my personal favorite, I think, to cook with and play with in the kitchen, because it's actually very versatile. You don't think of ground fish as being a super versatile product. And I don't know if that's something that you used to cook with growing up. It's like such a specific product, but I find it to be really, really fun. Burgers, tacos, like fillings for different things. So actually next week, we're going to be talking about ground sockeye. Really excited to talk about that with all of you if you're able to attend. The final, well, actually not the final product, but the final fillet product that we have, or something that's like just a raw product, is sockeye salmon strips. So these are just what they are, sockeye salmon strips. If you're not sure how to use these, I am obsessed with cooking with these in my air fryer. I find like it just gives them a really good texture. You can have a lot of fun with like rubs and sauces and like toppings for them. So those are the 4 like raw sockeye products that we have. And what I mean by raw is that they're not preserved like with a cure, because we have cold smoked sockeye salmon and hot smoked sockeye salmon. The packaging for this one's so beautiful, I think. So cold smoked sockeye is, I guess, the quintessential smoked salmon product, like what you think of with salmon and bagels. It's got that almost like briny, raw-ish texture. It's not raw, but it's just what you think of when you think of smoked salmon. And is this the kind of salmon that you would gift to people, or were you like when you were growing up, or would you give hot smoked?
It would be more hot smoked. If you did it at home, you'd probably use a hot smoker, and that's what we would end up with, or something similar to that.
So hot smoked sockeye is preserved using a slightly different method or a higher heat, and that's why it's called hot smoked sockeye. So it gives it more of like a cooked texture rather than like a raw texture. And picks up, like, I would say probably more like smoky flavors because of the woods that are used to smoke it. And it's really delicious. Both of these you can just eat out of the bag. You can put them on something, you can not put them on something. I personally just love standing at the refrigerator eating this. And I know a couple of my colleagues also feel very strongly in favor of doing that. So these are all of the sockeye products we have to offer. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 different things that you can make with sockeye, and we love being able to offer all of those to you. So any questions about the products actually before I do a little cooking demo here? I think we have lots of questions about products. I don't want to, hope I didn't confuse anybody here.
A lot of people are asking, are these special order? Are these add-ons, and where they can find them on our website?
I believe that the cold smoked sockeye you can get anytime. They're probably in the add-ons menu on the homepage. So you can add these to a box, whether you have a custom box or you get like the curated box every month, you can just add this into your box anytime. The Captain Cuts, again, pretend this is sockeye, doesn't say coho. This is also something that you can add into your box anytime. As far as the other products, currently the ground sockeye, the sockeye salmon strips, and the hot smoked are specials that we have that rotate throughout the year, depending on what we have going on. So always keep an eye out for those. You'll probably get emails about them. And in the next coming weeks, for every event that we're doing, there should be like a special that's sort of related to the product that we're talking about. So just keep an ear out for that. Anything else that we want to talk about today?
Yeah, so with the cold smoked and the hot smoked, are they ready to eat? Do you need to thaw them? Let us know.
We'll definitely thaw them because they are going to be frozen if you eat them out of the freezer like this. But they can both be thawed in the package. The other products that we have, you want to take them out of the package to thaw them ideally, but these you can thaw in the pack and then just have them in the fridge ready to go. There's like instructions on the back here, so you don't have to memorize everything I'm telling you right now. Instructions on the back of these. If you have any questions, you can reach out to the member experience team, but it's clearly marked on the package like how to thaw these. One hack that I have, if you find that 8 ounces of cold smoked sockeye is a lot for you to eat within 5 days, you can just cut the pack in half with like some kitchen shears, keep the frozen half in the freezer in like a resealable baggie, and then have the rest in the fridge, just in another baggie or container, so that you're only going through 4 ounces at a time. That way you don't have to gorge yourself on smoked salmon if you don't want to. But if you want to, please eat 8 ounces in 5 days. But they're ready to eat when they're thawed. You don't have to cook them. They're basically pre-prepared. They're not, I don't know if technically you can say they're cooked or not if they're smoked, but yeah, they're ready to eat. You don't have to do anything. Just put them on a bagel, put it in a frittata, I don't know, whatever you want to do with them, they're ready. Like zero work, just thawing. So.
And then last, what is the difference between the cold and hot smoked?
So cold smoked is what I think people traditionally understand as smoked salmon. It's like very similar to lox or grab lox. It has that sort of almost raw texture and briny flavor. It's just like the quintessential like deli, I want some salmon on a bagel salmon, except this is wild cold smoked sockeye, so it's got so much more flavor and texture than what you would maybe get at your corner bagel store. So hot smoked sockeye is prepared at a slightly higher temperature. So it gives the sockeye fillet a meaty texture. It's almost like it's just a fillet that you've baked, but I'd say just like meatier. I'm not sure how to explain it. Like to me, it's like it feels like just like a hearty version of salmon. So that's the I guess those are the difference. That's how I would explain the difference between the two. But they're both really good. They both have like you can use them interchangeably, but they're both very different, I would say.
Awesome. Well, I think it's time to get cooking.
All right. I'm really excited to show all of you how to sear sockeye today with crispy skin, no matter what your fillet looks like, whether it's a captain cut, a trapezoid, a triangle, if it's uniform in size, if it's wonky in size. This technique works for all of the above. And I would say that this is probably the one cooking technique that I discovered that made me feel like, oh, wow, I can do things that chefs can do. It was such a revelation. So I'm really excited to help you all figure out how to have that revelation in your own home. So do you mind turning on, just hit the got it thing. I have a little side camera here going so that I can give you like a better view of what is going on here. So what we're gonna do, we are going to, number one, prep the fish. Then we're gonna prep the pan. We're gonna sear the fish, skin side down, flip it when it's ready, then serve it up. That's it. It's super simple. And you can see everything that I'm doing. I'll show you how to do it here, but it's also in a step-by-step cooking guide that we have up on the blog. So for sure, like you can, if you're not able to follow along today, or if you want to reference this later, you'll be able to find it online. So we're going to drop a link in the chat about that. And Melissa here is going to be my sous chef. She's going to help me do some things here in the kitchen. So I have this other camera turned on. I'm going to turn on the burner to, oops, that's the wrong burner to a medium-high heat. So whatever that setting is on your stove, there's nothing in the pan right now. It's just an empty pan, no oil. And I have some salmon that is on the side. Melissa, do you actually want to go ahead and pat the sockeye dry while I'm talking a little bit about what we're going to do? So while the pan is preheating, this is a really great time to prep any of the fillets that you have. So the prep is super simple. You just want to pat the fillets dry, both sides, skin side and flesh side. The reason you're doing this is that any excess moisture on the surface of the skin is going to cause the salmon to steam rather than sear. So this is a really critical step. She's using a kitchen towel, like a clean kitchen towel. I have a whole set that I just use for fish only. You can use a paper towel. I just go through so many of these in my own home that it's better that I don't have a huge pile of paper towels in my garbage every day. So those are patted dry. When you're doing that, you don't have to be super delicate with the sockeye, but you're not squeezing anything out. You're just getting rid of some surface moisture. So those are prepped. The pan probably could stand to heat up a little bit more. So it's really important to have a pan that's hot before you put fish in it for this particular technique. There are other ways to sear salmon. Some people start with a cold pan. I actually haven't tried that yet, but that can work. For this particular method, you want to have a hot pan. I am actually using a stainless steel pan, but you can use a cast iron pan. If you want to use a non-stick pan, you can, but honestly, if you use this technique, your fish is not going to stick to the pan. You actually also can get a better sear if you're using a pan that is not non-stick. The non-stick surface, for some reason, inhibits like a really crispy sear. So, but totally okay, whatever pan you have, as long as it's like medium high, you are good to go. It might take you some trial and error to figure out like what medium high should be in your like on your stovetop, but yeah, I'm kind of familiar with this since I've done this a million times on this stove. So all right, pan is hot, fish is dried, that is. I defrosted the fish last night, so that's why it was like basically ready to go. I think we can drop a link in the chat about how to defrost salmon if you're not familiar with that. So other things that are essential, we've got the fish spatula. So this is a really flexible, thin spatula that's going to make it really easy to flip any fish that you have in the pan, especially something with skin on. I also have some high heat cooking oil. You can use, canola, you can use grapeseed oil, you can use vegetable oil, even something like ghee, which is basically like similar to clarified butter. Those are all fats that will not burn at high temperatures. So that's what I'm putting into the pan. You don't need a whole lot of it. You're not like deep frying anything. You're just wanting enough to cover the surface and have some of that like oil in there to make it really crispy and easy to cook. Avocado oil, if you have like, I think it's a refined avocado oil, that works. I've actually never cooked with avocado oil to my knowledge, but if you cook with extra virgin olive oil, it's not the end of the world. It just is gonna probably burn and give a little bit of off flavors. So now the oil is smoking, shimmering, like smoking hot, and that's what we're looking for. So first thing I'm gonna do, I've got a 6-ounce fillet. I'm gonna put this right in the pan, and you want to drop it in away from you. And then as you're putting it in the pan, you want to hold it down against the surface of the skillet for about 15 seconds or so. This is going to help the skin lay flat because as it hits the hot surface, it will begin to curl. So, you know, you don't have to smash it into the pan, but be firm. And then I'm actually going to turn this down to a medium heat now. It's important that it's hot when it hits the pan, but after that, you can kind of turn the heat down so it doesn't get too smoky and over the fish. And now I have captain cuts as well. I've got like a little cute piece and another piece that's a little bit longer that came in one pack. So again, putting it in, dropping it in away from me. And I'm going to hold that for about 15 seconds to try to get the like a good skin to pan contact. And you can check on the other piece too. Other than that, you're not doing anything to disturb the fish. It's just in there doing its thing. You're helping it along. Trust that it will come off the pan without you wiggling things around. So it's probably good to do this with an apron because I'm getting splashed a little bit, which is, I don't mind personally, but I'll have an apron one of these days. So I'm actually going to leave those in the pan to just sear for probably maybe 3 or 4 minutes. When it's ready to flip, the fish will release itself from the pan. It literally will tell you when it's done because it'll be easy to get the fillet to flip and like the skin will release from the pan. I don't know how else to say it. The bigger the piece or the thicker the piece, the better chance we have of having crispy skin. These like smaller pieces like this one, you can get crispy skin, but it just doesn't give you as much time to get a sear because you know the piece is so small that within 3 or 4 minutes it's probably done. But in any case, I'm just going to leave these to do their thing for a minute. Like I said, this is over medium heat now. I turned it down as soon as I put the fish in the pan. You don't have to do that. I find that works better because it lets the fish cook a little more gently after it gets that initial sear. So I didn't set a timer just because I kind of have done this a million times, but you can set a timer for yourself if you like, for 3 to 4 minutes, just to like remind yourself when to flip the fish. Another thing to look for is you'll start to see like on the edges of the fillet, there'll be this like white protein that forms that's called albumin. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's one of those things that I've been meaning to look up how to pronounce. But it is a tasteless, flavorless protein that just comes out of the salmon as well as other species. It's just very obvious with salmon because it's a pink or red fish. And that happens when it's exposed to high heat. And it should just indicate to you that the fish is pretty much close to being done. Not necessarily done, but I'm going to flip this piece now because I think it's fun. And I'm going to do this really carefully. Oh, that was nice. Yeah. So we got really good crispy skin here. This is probably ready to flip as well.
Hey, Kat, we have a couple people asking if you can eat the skin. And I know you love this question.
Yes,
I love it.
I love eating the skin of salmon. And this is, you know, I like eating salmon skin, even if it's not super crispy. Like I'm not anti skin that's like a little soft. It's actually, it's same for you. It's actually where a lot of the really nutritious fats are stored. That's why it's like the crispiest part of the salmon when you're cooking it. Let me take this piece out because this is probably done. Do you mind grabbing that plate so I don't splatter you? Hang on 1 second, everybody. This is probably done. I'm gonna let this one cook for another minute with the heat off. I'll just leave that there. So just have a little beauty shot moment. These are like super crispy pieces here. So that skin is going to be really, really delicious to eat. But like I said, I don't need it to be crispy to eat it and enjoy it. A lot of flavor in there. A lot of the like the essential fatty acids are trapped in the skin. And that I sort of started talking about this before I turned my back, but that's why the skin has the potential to get that crispy. I know on like TikTok or Instagram, they have this thing where they run a knife against the crispy texture of the skin. My mic is not sensitive enough to pick that up, but this is like, excuse me, just holding this, like nice and golden. You can see that like really delicious crust that's formed on there. I'm gonna take this off right now too. It's probably done. And actually, you can kind of see that it is not probably done, like I just said, because there's this line in here that looks a little raw. So I'm just gonna let that sit in the hot pan for maybe another minute or so, because I think that should be ready by then. And I'm just seeing in the chat, yeah, 3 to 4 minutes skin side down, and then maybe 2 minutes on the other side, exactly what you have just written, Joanne. For a smaller little like baby piece like this, it might only need 1 minute to cook on the other side. And even a bigger cut that's just about as thin as that might only need like a minute or two. For this piece, like 3 minutes is probably enough. And if you find that you've taken it off too early, you can always put it back in a hot pan and kind of just let it do its thing. You can even put a lid on it if you find that it's just not done enough, but I think that is not necessary to do for sockeye. Sockeye tends to be a little bit of a thinner fillet when you get it, because it's a relatively small fish. So you're not going to get these like huge chunky pieces like you would with a species like halibut or Pacific cod, which are bigger fish, or even coho is a bigger species of salmon. So yeah, you can see this really beautiful golden crust on the skin here. Actually, let me go ahead and turn this camera off because we got a lot going on now. And thank you for bearing with me turning my back. So now we have these really beautiful pieces of fish that we seared super easy while I was talking to you. And yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it. There's no sticking to the pan whatsoever. I'm always amazed that this technique works. You know, even before today's event, I got super nervous, like maybe this is the one time it won't work. It literally always works. So that is proof that it worked today. So let me grab a fork. And if you want to, oh, we forgot to salt and pepper these, but honestly, you can just sprinkle some salt on after if you want. There's a little salt right here. I find that I don't even need, I don't know if you want to, fine, I'll taste it. So it's perfectly flaky here. You can see that it's like, just came off really easily and nice and steamy and hot. So delicious, moist, tender, and crispy on top. If you're really not a fan of eating salmon skin, you can actually just pull this right off. It comes off just like that. And maybe it's because you don't like, maybe you didn't get the skin as crispy as you thought. Maybe you pulled it off the pan too early and you don't really feel like you want to eat it. Feed it to your dog or cat. They're going to love it. I know that my cat did love eating any sort of like scraps from the salmon that I didn't end up finishing. So feel free to have a bite here, Melissa. I feel like this sockeye has so much flavor. It doesn't even need something like lemon. And like I said, we forgot to season it. You're going to season it right before you put it on the pan. It probably doesn't even need it. It's so delicious. And this is my go-to when I'm cooking sockeye at home. I more often than not, I'm searing it because it's so fast, so convenient, so fun, and it has like so many different textures going on. So anyway, that is, I think, all I want to cover about this. I guess the one thing I'll note is I like my salmon to be a little bit on the medium rare side so that it's not totally well done all the way through. when you're cooking it, for like 2 or 3 minutes after you flip it, you'll usually be able to get a good medium rare. If you want it to be cooked more, then leave it on the pan for a little longer with the heat still on. It should be like 120 degrees at the thickest part of the fillet for medium rare, but it's actually really hard to, like, how are you going to measure that with with like a thermometer? You're not going to be able to measure it. Just like trust that that's as done as you want it. So it'll take a few times for you to get used to doing this. It'll take a little bit of practice, and it's not, like I said, it's not intuitive, it's not obvious. It is a skill that you learn. So hopefully this really just shows you and demystifies how easy that is. Let's go to some questions, if there are any.
Yeah, a couple people were asking, do you serve it skin side up, or is there a proper way to serve it?
So I do serve it skin side up. If you're serving it skin side down, then the steam from the heat will sort of like, it'll make it a little less crunchy. So if you're serving it skin side up, I know like most of the pictures that we have on the blog for recipes are with the flesh side up, so you know exactly what it is. It's sockeye salmon, but when I'm at home, I usually serve it skin side up, so that stays like nice and crispy, if not all the way through the meal, at least part of the way through the meal. So depends on how fast you eat.
And can this technique be used for other fish that we offer, sablefish, halibut, etc.?
Absolutely. The timing is going to be a little bit different. This absolutely you can use for coho salmon. It's the same technique. I did mention earlier that coho pieces sometimes can be a little bit thicker. So you're still going to sear it for 3 or 4 minutes on the skin side. But after you flip it, it'll need more than, the 2 minutes it took to cook a captain cut, or the 3 or 4 minutes it took to cook the, regular sockeye portion. It might need, just an extra minute or two. So for sablefish, same technique, but sablefish is much fattier and needs a lot more time to cook. So you do want to sear it. You can sear it for maybe like 4 or 5 minutes on the skin side to get it super crispy. Hold it against the skillet with a spatula. And then after you flip it, then it'll be in the pan for however many more minutes, maybe like 6 more minutes or something like that. You might even feel like putting it in the stove if you have this, like the oven on. So yeah, those are the 2 like skin on, the 3 skin on species that we offer. So I'm about to say soho, coho, sockeye, sablefish. For something like Pacific halibut, similar technique, sear it on one side for 3 or 4 minutes, even though there's no skin, flip it, and then cook it till it's like cooked through. So all of those you can actually find, like all of these like directions that I'm telling you, you can find on the Wild Alaskan Company blog. We have a whole how-to step-by-step series with like the timing, temperatures, techniques. So definitely check that out. I don't think I have the link up here and ready, but you'll see them on the blog. They're very helpful. And you can always reach out to the member experience team if you can't find them. They know exactly where they are. So
on the topic of great recipes, some people are asking what you guys would pair as a side with this.
With a side, I mean, you really can do anything. It's the possibilities are like infinite.
Yeah, I mean, my go-to is rice.
Yeah, rice.
I love a good salad, mashed potatoes, really nice crunchy bread too is nice.
Yeah, I will say that because it's summertime, like even just like a really fresh cucumber salad is really, really good with this, because then you get like this cold and crunchy with a hot and crunchy and flaky combination of like textures and temperatures that I think is really nice. And
asparagus and potatoes is a great idea too.
Yeah, absolutely. Asparagus and potatoes, classic. I do like serving salmon with asparagus, especially if I'm baking it, because they bake around the same time, but like you can do whatever you want pretty much with this. In terms of like I know I said I don't even need lemon with this. I barely need salt. If you want to add a sauce, you can, but that's completely like your world is your oyster. You know, it's completely up to you. I don't personally think it needs it, but if you're having this every day, like it's really fun to mix it up and explore different flavors with a sauce, or even like mixing flavors into like a side of vegetables with this. Because this takes, you know, that probably took me 6 to 8 minutes tops. Well, let's say 10 minutes start to finish with preheating the pan. That gives you 10 minutes maybe to throw something together if it's a little bit low maintenance. You know, you don't want to be hopping back and forth from like sauteing some broccoli while you're sauteing the sockeye. But like something that's like done in under 10 minutes, that's like ideal, because then you're just like ready to go, like you're ready to eat. So good.
And a couple people have brought up air fryers, which we also love. Do you have any tips or tricks for, you know, if you're going to get a crispy skin, or how they should approach using the air fryer?
Absolutely, you can get crispy skin in the air fryer. That's probably the easiest way to get crispy skin if you're not sure, if you're like a little bit nervous about trying to get crispy skin on the stovetop, which you shouldn't be after watching this event. But the air fryer is great because it's a dry heat that circulates. And we have I know there's a really good, I mentioned teriyaki and salmon going really well together, but we have a teriyaki air fryer salmon recipe with like crispy broccoli that's up on the blog that you might really enjoy like trying out. Yeah, air fryer, just any fish is good in the air fryer, I think. I don't have like, you know, the step-by-step guide to how to cook it in an air fryer, but because it kind of just depends on like what you're putting in there and what kind of spices you're using, or using a sauce. But I'd say generally, if I'm cooking sockeye in the air fryer, it'll take maybe 6 minutes tops. So yeah, and crispy for sure. You still want to pat it dry, and then from there, you're pretty much good to go. So.
Awesome. We have one last question about marinades. Do you guys have a favorite one? Is there one up on the blog, or how they should approach marinating?
I used to go through a short phase of marinating my salmon. It was just like some mustard, honey, maybe some soy sauce, some chives and garlic, and I would marinate that, and that would be really good. It was just quick and easy. Sometimes it was a little runny, sometimes it was a little sticky, but you can't go wrong with something like that.
How long would you marinate that when you were cooking? Like 30 minutes, 20 minutes, something like that?
If I could remember to do it as soon as it was thawed, maybe like that morning, then I would marinate all day, which was probably on the longer side. And sometimes I'd wait before like 30 minutes, 5 minutes sometimes, and it ended up just being a sauce. So depends. I can't really mess it up.
We do have a few salmon marinade recipes on the blog. Not a whole bunch, just because I think of my personal preference for it not needing much. However, I love doing something that's like a maple soy garlic. Like if you mix those together, maybe with a little miso paste even, it gets a little bit like thickened and saucy. And then cooking with that is so delicious. And that's like great with rice, because if it's a little runny or saucy, you can just pour the juices over the rice. So that's like probably my go-to if I'm doing a marinade for salmon. So yeah, maple balsamic homemade blend, that is a good combo, Donda. So
and then I guess we have 4 minutes left, so we'll round it out with, when you flip the salmon, when you're pan searing it, do you try to achieve a crispiness on the non-skin side?
I do not. It's actually, I was thinking about this the other day. It's similar to when you're cooking scallops. Like we have weather vane scallops that we're not, this is not part of this event, but we'll probably have something in the future. What you want to do is get a really nice sear on one side, and then you're just flipping to cook it through. It's not going to be crispy all around. We're not doing like a shallow fry or a deep fry for the fish. And anyway, like I mentioned earlier, like the fats are in the skin, like the fats are not so much in the flesh side. So it's not really going to get crispy. Like you'll see some caramelization. This one's a little bit hard to see. Well, anyway, I've destroyed this fish because we've been eating it while we've been standing here, but You'll probably see some caramelization and like golden tones that start forming on the non-skin side. But yeah, you don't need to get that side crispy. It's not realistic for you to get it crispy either. You want to just get a solid sear on the crispy skins on the skin side, and then the rest is just to cook it through. All right, good to close it down. That's what I'm seeing in the chat. So thank you so much for tuning in today. We have another event planned for next week where I'll be sharing with you some fun recipes to make with ground sockeye salmon, a completely different product. And I mentioned earlier, it's personally my favorite to play with in the kitchen because there's so many options and like surprising options that you can make with it. So I really hope that you learned a thing or two today about, what you might want to try out tonight or later this week. You've got new chef skills to share with, yourself or your friends or your family. So until next time, live wild, everybody. Thanks for coming.